one page of my notes down. So we have been looking at this text, Breathe, You're Alive. And whenever I see it, I am reminded of some Thich Nhat calligraphy that says,
a little louder.
Yes, that says, breathe, you're online. And so maybe that's appropriate for everybody here too. And this is the sutra on the full awareness of the breath. And as Chris has shared, and maybe you're experiencing, the Anapanasati Sutta, or sutra, is a bit of a tongue twister. And what I felt inclined to do was to get in there, to dig around at the etymology and see if looking at the words could help me understand the sutra itself. And it turned out to be helpful for me, so maybe it'll be helpful for you too. But what I found is that anapana just refers to the inhalation and the exhale. The inhale and the exhale. And sati is often translated as mindfulness, but it can, from the Pali, so going from early, or the language of early Buddhism, often translated as mindfulness, but it also can mean remembering. So here we are remembering the in-breath, remembering the out-breath, feeling the unity that is here. And what I love about this word remembering, as a translation of sati, is that these practices, especially as Thich Nhat Hanh gives them to us, are very simple, not hard to do, but hard to remember to do them, which is a catch. So this remembering, I felt like I really wanted to expand on what is it that we're remembering along with our practice and our breath. And I had a sense of remembering who we are. We're remembering our wholeness. We're remembering our goodness. We're remembering our not separate self, that we're full of the full world, the mountains and the rivers, one another, and our sangha, the practice, our children. So remembering beyond dualities. So I came up with this little bit here. I thought maybe we could translate the word sati, or instead of just as mindfulness, but as remembering beyond separation of mind and body, which is what the breath does. It brings us back into the unity there. The ana and the pana is what helps us remember.
You need Chelsea to speak louder, raise your hand. Help her remember.
Give it a signal. And so while Thich Nhat Hanh gives us these very simple entry points into practice, if you looked or listened to some of the other Theravada teachers, or the Theravada teachers, talk about some of this, it isn't simple. It's very nuanced. And it's what I actually really love about Buddhist psychology and early Buddhism, is there is a map for the mind that is beyond anything I've ever seen before, but I can get lost in there. So I love our Mahayana practice of coming back and just sitting and being here in the body. And as I was sitting tonight, I had this real sense of, oh, the way the breath is the bridge of mind and body. Thai's teachings are a bit of a bridge between early Buddhism and Mahayana also. So you have a flavor of that in this book and in his work. So Chris invited me to speak on the 5th section. And I'm just going to read, as far as I got was just the title, Subject 5, Observing Our Feelings, before I had to stop again and look more deeply. So I didn't get into the text before I had to stop and investigate this word feelings. What I want to say about that is that, checking my notes here. Right, is that it can be a little confusing because we Westerners, conditioned by this culture, Western psychology, might think feelings means our emotions. And in this text, the way that we're using the word feelings is really something a little bit different, a little more subtle and nuanced. So the Pali word here in this sutra is Vedana for feelings. And going into the etymology of that again, the Veda is to know. Is to know. And what it is that we're coming to know is this subtle sense that's not thinking, that's a feeling knowing of just three things that are the roots for many things. And that's pleasant, unpleasant, or some neither neither. And it's not that there's some goal to be in the neither neither, because that can actually just be confusing. So what we're doing is just subtly tuning in more and more. Pleasant, pleasure, unpleasant, displeasure. I don't know what this is. And we're in that little gap before the thinking comes in. Let's see. So some other translations of this Pali word Vedana, or feelings, as Thai is using it here, are feeling tone or hedonic tone. And the root there in hedonic, it's from the Greek hedonikos, which means pleasurable. Okay, what else I've got for us here? So Thai goes on to say, he's talking about mental formations, and what are those? He tells us that there's 51 or 52, depending on which school of Buddhism that you're looking at. And it's just what's arising, is it maybe a simple way to understand it? It's just what's arising. So it's number 7 and 8 here in our text of subject 5 are breathing in, I'm aware of my mental formation. And breathing out, I'm aware of my mental formations. Breathing in, I calm my mental formations. And breathing out, I calm my mental formations. And he tells us here that it's most likely, his writing is, it is most likely that mental formations here simply mean feelings, this subtle sense that's here. And it can be this Vedana can be in the mind or in the body. And as I was looking at it and feeling into it, I had a sense there of, well, here, let me read you actually Bodhi. He maybe says it a little better than I can. This is somebody ever feeling that? Louder.
Oh, over there louder. I was just mirroring.
All right, thank you. So this is Bhikkhu Bodhi, and he says, feeling, Vedana, is the mental factor which feels the object. It's the affective mode in which the object is experienced. The Pali word Vedana does not signify emotion, which is something more complex, but the bare affective quality of an experience, which may be either pleasant, painful, or neutral. And then this is Bhikkhu Analayo. And he was asked the question, what sorts of common mistakes or misconceptions do meditators make with respect to Vedana? And his answer was, one could be a basic misunderstanding that confuses Vedana with emotions. Vedana are not emotions. They're just this hedonic tone of pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Emotions are rather states of mind. Another possible shortcoming is to reduce Vedana only to the bodily component. Vedana, get it right here, Vedana is by definition both bodily and mental. It's the link between body and mind. So this is sort of fascinating to me, this subtle little sense here that we can tune into being the link between body and mind. There can be Vedana of the body, if I hurt myself and then experience physical pain. On the other hand, somebody might say something unpleasant about me. The ear is not in pain. It's the mind that's in pain. This is a mental feeling. If you want to get the full potential of contemplation of Vedana, it would be good to be aware of both bodily and mental feelings without narrowing it down to one or another. And the last one I'll share here, this is Gil Fronsdale. This is all part of my inquiry to try and understand what is Thai talking about here with feelings that's beyond emotion, something different. So Gil Fronsdale says, the pleasant and unpleasant nature of our experience is called in Pali Vedana. It's usually translated into English as feeling, but because the English word feeling also means emotion, it's kind of confusing for people. So some people prefer the word feeling tone, or hedonic tone. The Pali word Vedana is a little bit of an ambiguous word because it also comes from the word to know or to feel, or both to know and feel. And I think the English word witness comes from the same Indo-European root. I thought that was just fascinating, the seeing and the witnessing. So he says the ambiguity between feeling and knowing points to a little ambiguity in the nature and understanding of feeling tone in Buddhism. And I experience it as sometimes just like a little glimmer that comes and then passes, like a little, something's here, or a little, oh, something's here, or something in between. And what feels fascinating to me is that that little glimmer potentially contains our greed, hate, and delusion. That little glimmer potentially carries the seeds of liberation or suffering. It's our karma is coming through this little glimmer that we get, this feeling, knowing. How am I doing on time, Chris?
You're fine.
Okay. Right, so just looking at my notes, I had some things here around, so practicing with this feeling, knowing can be very impactful. Practice in understanding ourselves and building capacity to recognize what is making us act. And it's why if you've ever taken an MBSR, a mindfulness-based stress reduction course, they give you a little calendar called the pleasant moments calendar or the unpleasant moments calendar, and you're asked to track it. And then to write down, did I know that that moment was pleasant while it was happening? Or was I so caught up I didn't even see it? And what do I think of it now, reflecting back, using those reflective capacities? And I did this for some time with young people, with adolescents. We did MBSRT for teen classes. So it's not so hard to get when you just tune in. It's again, one of those simple, but hard to remember, I think. Read a little bit from what I wrote here, page 66, if you have the book.
Is the implication that unpleasant is unpleasant and that pleasant is good? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, not that it's good and that we're going after one, but actually that in that moment of recognizing that there might be a little seed of craving that's growing right out of it. So we're actually practicing to pause. And when I worked actually doing some games with kids at Regal, to the family program there, to help bring this forward, this little taste of just knowing, we actually played a game called push, pull, stomp, or push, pull, pause, to have a sense, like someone says something, ice cream, pull, broccoli, push, and then little brother, stop. So can we just become familiar with what it is, not to make one good or bad? Here on the same subject of pleasant, if it's a pleasant feeling, this is Thich writing, when we're aware that it's a pleasant feeling, it may become even more pleasant. If we're eating or drinking something that is healthy and nourishing for us, our feeling of happiness will grow as we become aware of it. And this feels congruent with some of the research, maybe Rick Hanson's work, if you know, he's the author of A Buddha's Brain and many other books on the neuroscience of meditation and mindfulness. He writes around soaking in the good, and taking just 20 seconds when we're having a beneficial moment to really let it come in. And then that research is showing that it really can incline the mind towards well-being from just soaking in these moments. If what we're consuming is harmful for our intestines, our lungs, our liver, our environment, or awareness, our environment, our awareness will reveal to us that our so-called pleasant feeling has within it many seeds of suffering. And I went down some rabbit holes listening to some Theravada teachers as I was studying this last week. And I found that there's actually, then you can even take the pleasant, unpleasant, or at least the pleasant, and break it down even further into pleasant, wholesome, or pleasant, unwholesome. because the meal I'm eating that nourishes my body and supports my local farmers certainly has seeds of liberation within it, possibly does. And the righteous anger that I'm consuming might feel really good for just a second, but is out the world that we want to see. Yeah, I think I just want to read this one other section, and then I have a little bit of a guided practice for us. This is the bottom of page 66. Time says, if we have an unpleasant feeling, we take that feeling in our arms like a mother holding her crying baby. The mother is mindfulness, and the crying baby is the unpleasant feeling. Mindfulness and conscious breathing are able to calm the feeling. If we do not hold the unpleasant feeling in our arms, but allow it just to remain in us, it will continue to make us suffer. Breathing in, I touch the unpleasant feeling in me. Breathing out, I touch the unpleasant feeling in me. And he goes on, I don't want to read much more because I want us to do something experiential, but he goes on to talk about the non-duality of this practice. And I think this is where it gets really good. We're not exiling some part of ourself or making some part of us other. Oh, that part of me that's always anger, and then loathing that part, or that part of me that's anxious and then wanting to get rid of it. It's holding it. It's allowing it all to be here. It feels like a radical practice of inclusiveness to me, and non-duality. There's just some closing words here. Thich says, mindfulness helps us identify a feeling as a feeling and an emotion as an emotion. It helps us hold our emotions tenderly within us, embrace them, and look deeply at them. By observing the true nature of any feeling, we can transform its energy into the energy of peace and joy. And so I would love for us to do, if we have time, Chris, like a little 5 minutes maybe. Okay, a little guided practice. And then the prompts for the dance will just come out of your experience of playing in this realm of Vedana. What is this feeling, knowing, pleasant, unpleasant, neither, neither. So this is a guided practice that I'm going to give some props to the person who I was listening to, which was, if I can find my page, Mark Williams. And he's one of the founders of mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, which grew out of mindfulness-based stress reduction, which was John Kabat-Zinn, who is a teacher of Thich. So we've come full circle. Take a sip of my tea. So maybe just coming into a little bit of a zazen body for a moment. Doesn't have to be a little bit of a zazen body, because it doesn't have to be very still. You can just attune inwards, check out what your body is needing right now. And then give yourself a little bit of support, whatever that looks like. A little rocking or swaying would be fine. You can let your attention then come into the places that are making contact with the surface below you. Body supported by a chair, by a cushion. Maybe noticing the rising and the falling of your breath. In and out. You might also be aware of sounds in the space near you or sounds from your own body. And then seeing if your mind could just rest in one place for a few moments. Either those contact points where your body is supported, your breath, sounds. And then here with this gentle focus on some object that's anchoring your attention. See if you can register the Vedana, the feeling knowing, pleasant, unpleasant, neither. When you're feeling ready, see if you can shift to a different anchor. If you were with your breath a moment ago, switch to sounds. If you're with sounds, maybe switch to the contact points, the touch points. Might just have a quality of listening. Just listening inwardly, listening to those sounds, feeling, knowing. And if you can, registering or noting that feeling tone there. And if you're doing all right and the practice is still feeling grounded or you're still feeling pretty regulated, you could turn in towards the thought stream and see what's happening there. Not so much the content, but how your feeling tone, your feeling knowing is responding when it makes contact with that thought stream. Pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, or neither. And then coming back into the body. And maybe here even checking out the emotional body. What's arising or has been arising in the emotional body? And what's your first response, your first feeling knowing as you allow that to come forward? We'll close the practice in just a moment. So here ending, maybe by tuning back into yourself, seeing what you need and giving yourself that thing, little movement, rocking, wiggling fingers or toes. And then in your own time, coming back into the shared space. I thought we would go from here into some dyads. maybe Gretchen isn't, is our person doing that? Or Chris is
No,
our
I
person
can do
doing
it.
that, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the prompt is really just, what was that like? Are you getting a glimmer of feeling tone? Are you tasting a little bit of that pleasant, unpleasant? You do catch it? And maybe then it felt like it could be beneficial. There could be a question of like, what are the implications of this?
Yeah.
Thanks.
And we'll have, what do you think?